So I kind of took it off of The Devil Wears Prada and I just kind of changed it to The Widow Wears Pink. And that's kind of where it came from and it stuck. And I actually love it. And I guess nobody had written anything about this kind of situation before. And I guess I struck a nerve.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I talk with fascinating, talented, and influential guests who reflect on the adventures and challenges of aging and who are living their lives with vibrance and purpose. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist, writer, and zestful ager. And if you like this podcast, you'll love my companion course, Zestful Aging, Simple and Sustainable Habits for Health and Longevity. You'll have access to what I've learned from being a psychotherapist for 30 years and the latest research on what habits really matter and contribute to vibrant aging. Find out more at NicoleChristina.com. Last week, we heard from Liz Scott, who's a psychologist and a memoir writer. She wrote the book This Never Happened about her childhood and growing up years. She grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut, and she was told and really experienced her life as a very white Protestant young woman in Connecticut, living a very Martha Stewart kind of life. Her parents forgot to tell her that they actually descended from a long, long, proud history of Jewish ancestry, and that is just the beginning of the deception. And next week, we're going to hear from John Leyland, who's a New York Times columnist and the author of Happiness is a Choice. It's a fascinating book where John interviews and spends time among the oldest old and learns some really beautiful lessons that are life-changing. I think you're really going to enjoy that. Well, I have my Jack Russell Terrier Sparky beside me, my coffee in my hand, so let's begin. Today we're speaking with Stacy Feintuch, who was a stay-at-home mom in 2011 when her husband suddenly passed away from a heart attack. After a few difficult years, she started the blog The Widow Wears Pink, which helped her reach other widows and help them through their journeys. Last year, Stacy started a website, Living the Second Act, with her partner Mimi Golub, which is geared towards women in their 40s and 50s who are moving towards their next chapter. Welcome to the show, Stacy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And I love this title, The Widow Wears Pink. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with that?
Absolutely. It was funny. The whole reason the blog came about, I was literally just chatting with a girlfriend on the phone, and I kind of just threw it out there. I'm like, maybe I should write a blog. And she totally encouraged me, and she said, absolutely do it right now. And I started laughing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And she said, no, really, Google how to start a blog and do it. And that is what I did. And then I was on the phone with her, and I was like, okay, now I need a name. And we went back and forth, and I happen to love the color pink. So
Mm.
I kind of took it off of The Devil Wears Prada, and I just kind of changed it to The Widow Wears Pink. And that's kind of where it came from, and it stuck. And I
Mm.
actually love it.
It sounds like it fits really perfectly because, I'm going to ask you to tell the story, but there was a big transition between your life when your husband was alive and then now, which is so different than you could have imagined.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like almost a different person than I was 8 years ago.
Tell us the story.
So 8 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had two adorable little girls, a wonderful husband. I had like your typical suburban life. And my husband went out for a run and he came home, said he wasn't feeling well, went upstairs to lie down, and I heard this crash and I went upstairs and he had collapsed on the floor. And I called 911 and he had had a heart attack and he passed away in the hospital, like within the first few minutes he was there. So obviously this was a horrible, horrible, complete tragedy. I mean, my poor daughters, they were 10 and 12 at the time, and they had to deal with it. I had to deal with it. It was unexpected. It was really, really horrible, as anyone could imagine. Um, I had a few rough years. The first few years were definitely very rough. It was, my children went through a lot. My older daughter especially had a very hard time handling it. She was 12 and, an adolescent girl just turning a teenager. That's a tough time anyway. And to deal with this on top of it, she really went through a lot. Um, but as we all went through therapy and as we all kind of started coming out of this shock and this horrible sadness of it all and kind of moving towards, like they say, a new normal,
Mm-hmm.
I felt I needed something different, like something needed to shift in me because my life had definitely shifted. So that's when I thought I'd start a blog. I had never written before, but I've been an avid reader my whole life and I've always had stories in my head. And I said, you know what, maybe this is the time to start it. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Your blog is so friendly and accessible, and it's
Thank
almost
you.
like you're having coffee with a friend when you read it.
Thank you. It's funny, like I said, I never wrote before. And when I started it, my friends, of course, all liked it and, they were reading it. And within the first few weeks, all of a sudden it was being shared and people were commenting and people I didn't know. And when I first knew I had something was when I live in New Jersey, a woman from Florida contacted me that her husband had passed away within the first few months. And she somehow stumbled upon my blog and she started sharing it and telling me how it helped her and it was helping her get through her loss. And she was thanking me and then she started calling me for advice as she was going through things. And we kind of formed this little bond over the phone.
Mm.
And I never met her. I still never met her. But that's when I knew I had something. And then little by little, it started happening with more widows. And I honestly, I was surprised. Like I
Mm.
said, I'd never done this before, but I guess I struck a chord. I wasn't, an older woman who lost a husband. I was younger. I, didn't have very, very young children, but I didn't have adult children either. It was somewhere in the middle. And
Yes.
I guess nobody had written anything about this kind of situation before. And I guess I struck a nerve.
Hmm. So it resonated with more people than you ever imagined.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I really thought it would just be like my friends and my family, and I would stop at that and I would write a few times and that would be the end of it. But it really resonated, and I was thrilled that it did. I was happy that I was helping other people. It's like it really does make you feel so good.
Mm. As a psychotherapist, I often talk to people who are going through really intense grief and loss, and sometimes they say they don't know how they're going to get through it. You're brought to your knees.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got through it?
Oh, I wish I could. I wish I knew.
Yeah.
No, I said the same thing. I remember the night it happened, the first few weeks it happened. I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, there was no way in hell. It's funny. I always tell this story. My mom, when it happened, my parents kind of swooped in and they, stayed with us for a little while. And right after the funeral, my best friend, who's known me my whole life, told me that my mother went up to her and said, "I'm so worried about Stacy. I don't think she can handle this." And
Mm.
my friend said to her, "Yes, she can. Your daughter is much stronger than you realize." And when my friend Wendy, when she came back and told me, repeated the story to me, I looked at her and I said, "My mother's right. I can't do this." And she said, "No, your mother's wrong. I'm right. You can do this." And it wasn't easy. You know, like I said, those first few years were, I could never go back and relive them. They were extremely difficult. But
Mm-hmm.
you find this resilience and you find this strength, especially I
Mm-hmm.
think when you're a mother. I wanted to put myself second, and I had to put my daughters first. And
Mm-hmm.
that, for those first 2, 3, 4 years, that's all I did. There was nothing else that mattered to me. The thing that I always said was, all I want is for them to grow up and be happy, healthy, mentally healthy, successful people in life, despite what happened to them.
You went into like survival mode, right?
Oh,
You did like
absolutely.
Mama Bear, and that focus, that laser focus on protecting your cubs. Maybe that helped you too, so you could sort of,
I
get
think
through.
it let me kind of put my own grief and my own
Yeah.
fears aside because
Mm-hmm.
I was so laser focused on them. And that was all that mattered to me. And, people would say to me, especially those first few weeks or months, I had friends said to me, "Oh, I don't know how you're doing this. I wouldn't get out of bed." And I said, "Yes, you would." I said, "I would have
Mm-hmm.
said the same thing, but when you have kids, you do what you have to do." And I
Mm-hmm.
would get out of bed like having not slept the night before, like bags under my eyes, didn't get dressed, like a disaster, but I would make
Right.
sure to get up, get my kids to school, give them breakfast, and make
Mm-hmm.
sure their day was as normal as it possibly could be.
Thank goodness for your kids because it might have looked very different if you had not had your girls.
You know what? It's so interesting. My grandmother, my mother's father actually passed away when he was the same age as my husband was, 48. And my grandmother had children a lot younger than I did. So her children were older. Like my mom, I was born already. I was two. My mom was in her 20s. My aunt was in her 20s. And my aunt said something to me when it first happened, um, that, comparing me to my grandmother. And I said, "Yeah, but she didn't have to deal with young kids." And she said, "You know what? It's going to sound horrible, but not that it's better, but she had her own stuff to deal with differently because she was 100% alone. You have something
Mm-hmm.
to focus on." And she kind of compared it that way. And I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way, but she was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like she, didn't have anybody at home. She was alone. All her friends were married. Um, and, she didn't know what to do with herself. At least
Right.
I
No
had that focus of
distraction.
my kids.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right, right. Hi, Zestful Agers. I'll be attending the International Federation of Aging's 15th Global Conference on Aging in November of 2020. And if you're interested in improving your understanding of age friendly environments, debating solutions to address inequalities, confronting the reality of ageism, and delving into what it means to enable the functional ability of an older person, head over to ifa2020.org to find out more. There's an early bird special on until the end of the year, so take advantage and join me in Niagara Falls. I'll see you there. So, you talk a little bit in your blog about, and it's a very funny post about hot yoga. Has that been part of your recovery or healing?
Yes, my later healing. Like, um, I actually found hot yoga through my blog. A widow, also very similar situation to mine, who happened to live in the same town as me, read my blog and got in touch with me. Same as that woman from Florida, but she happened to live right here. And we spoke on the phone, and she told me what it was really helping her was hot yoga. And I laughed, and I'm like, "Oh, I could never do that." And
Mm.
she said, "Oh, I didn't think I could either. Come with, we had never met. Come with me. I'll meet you there. We'll go. I'll get you a mat. I'll do it all for you. Just come with me." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" And somehow I don't know how she did it, but she convinced me. And I went to this class. I don't know if you've ever done hot yoga before, but it is hot.
There's no false advertising there.
No, it is 95 degrees in this
Oh,
room with 40%
wow.
humidity.
Ooh,
It is
like a
like a
shower.
hottest summer day. And it's the first time I did this, and she's moving and she's doing all the stuff next to me, and I'm looking at her like, "Are you kidding?" But the instructor that
She's
she
not
took,
sweating though, right? She's just
no,
perspiring.
she she was sweating, but like happily sweating, very
Yeah.
happily sweating. And the instructor that she had taken me to this class was a friend, became a friend of hers, and she told her that I was new and everything, and she was so helpful, and she like kind of guided me through the first class. And then when I left there, I was beyond disgusting and sweating and thought I was going to pass out. But I'm like, you know what? There was some little part of me that kind of liked it, and I just kept going back, and I really, really love it. It's definitely, I'm still beyond disgusting sweating. Like that does not
Yeah.
change.
Right.
And I'm exhausted when I leave there. And there are sometimes in the middle of that class, I'm like, are they kidding me? Like still.
Oh.
But there's something about it that just keeps bringing me back. And it's very helpful. It really is. It kind of calms you and takes you away from everything for a while.
You can't really focus on anything else but, you know, trying to get through it and not pass out.
It's true. It's true. Everything else in your head goes away because all I keep thinking
Ah.
is, okay, now how am I going to get myself into that position in this heat? That's all you think about.
Oh, goodness. It's radical yoga.
It totally is. But
Wow.
it's nice. It's and you know what? It's something else about it that I love, and my friends will probably listen to this, but I do it alone. I don't do it with my friends. They don't, none of them do it. It's just me, and I go there. And I've met people there, and there are people I definitely talk to in the classes, but it's my thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not doing it with my kids or my friends or my boyfriend or anything. It's
Mm,
just me. And I like that.
mm-hmm. That sounds really important that you're carving out a little time to do something that's really difficult, but then I'm guessing that there's a sense of accomplishment like I got through it, I'm going to take a shower and good for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I leave that class, I'm like, woohoo, I did it like every
Mm.
single time. And this is like, I've been doing it for 3 years now, and I still feel like that when I leave a class.
Oh my goodness.
And when
Tell
I
me.
when I kind of conquer a new pose that I couldn't really do before,
Ah.
that's also I'm like, oh my God, I look what I did. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's nice.
Yeah, that sounds really helpful. Tell me a little bit about your website that you started last year, Living the Second Act. What's
Yes.
that all about?
Through my blog, through The Widow Wears Pink, editor of a lifestyle magazine reached out to me and asked me to write for them, and I did. And she and I kind of got this little email friendship going, and we became like friends without ever having met each other. She lived in Boston, I live in New Jersey, and she emailed me once a few months later and told me she was leaving her position. And she kind of threw in there, oh, I'm thinking about starting something on my own. So without even thinking, like honestly, I didn't even think about writing this. I wrote her back and I said, do you want a partner? And she said, absolutely. And
Mm.
the next thing I know, we had never met. We brainstormed and we came up with this name and our theme and, where we wanted to go with it. And it was born last May 1st. So it's going to be almost a year now. And we have definitely evolved. It's tough starting out like this. And we had, some bugs and some things along the way, but for the most part, we've really grown in a year. And what we've been realizing is what does really well for us and what people really, really want to read are those deep personal stories like tragedy,
Mm.
triumph over the
Oh, I
tragedy, and
see.
those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things. And that's what we are really starting to focus on now because we have had a lot of those stories, not just written by me and Mimi, but we have other writers writing for us. And when those stories come out, people really, really want to read them. Like
Mm-hmm.
we had one story of a mom, a suburban mom who was an alcoholic, and really her life almost fell apart. And then she kind of pulled it back together. She goes to AA, and that touched such a nerve. It People just want to hear how people get over or get
Hmm.
through something like that.
And you know that what I say to clients, and I firmly believe, is being an adult is hard. You know, even if you don't have a massive tragedy, there's so many challenges and so many worries, and it's very filled with anxiety. And I think people want to hear like there are things I can do. This can end well. I have more power than I imagine. Kind of like a heroine story.
Absolutely. And that's what we want our stories and what our stories are becoming. It is a lot of heroin, and it is sometimes just everyday stuff like having a bad day or, something going wrong with your kids, just something that stresses you out so much, but
Mm.
you figure out how to get through it. Everybody has their own stuff. And I think people do like to read how others get through it.
Hmm. So here you find yourself now with this blog that's reaching people in different states who you don't know, who you're becoming friendly with, and now a website with your writing partner. What else do you see for your future? What are you hoping for?
I would like, what I would really like, we really want the site Living the Second Act to kind of take off. We want it to get to a place where it almost has a life of its own, where people will know who we are and what we're trying to say, and we want to
Hmm.
help others, especially women, but we have men writers too. And we want people to see us as, oh, well, I read on Living the Second Act, someone who went
Mm.
through so and so situation and they got through it, so I can do it. I can go through that
I
too.
A source
And
of inspiration.
we totally want to be a source of inspiration. That's exactly it. We would like to be a source of inspiration. And then personally, my daughter, I have one daughter that's a freshman in college now, and one who's a senior. I mean, I'm sorry, she's a sophomore in college now, and another one who's a senior in high school who's going off to college next year. So I am going to be an empty nester,
Oh
which
boy.
is, a little scary,
Mm.
a little exciting. Like I said, I've been a single mom for almost 8 years with these girls, and I don't want them to leave me because they're
Mm.
mine.
Of
But
course.
I also do want to kind of see where I am and where I'm going to go now that they're, moving on in their lives. It's time for me to do the same. So see what happens with that. I do have a boyfriend now, and, I want to see where our relationship goes when it's just, no kids around anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be an interesting transition.
You wrote about it in one of your blog posts about bringing your daughter to college.
Oh God. That was really, really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really tough day. It was a tough few weeks actually. She, I live in suburbia, and in where I live, these kids, there's about 20, 25 colleges that they find acceptable, and they like to go to one of those. And it's just kind of where I live, what is common.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not get into her first choice, which was a horrible disappointment. So she chose her backup, and she got there. Well, before she got there, she had found a roommate. That's what they do now. I think it's so much easier. When we were young and we got no idea who our roommate was, and you just walked in and you got what you
Make
got.
it work, yeah.
But they find them, and she did found this lovely girl who they were excited. They were decorating the room together, the whole thing. And the girl called her 48 hours before we were leaving for school and said that she wasn't going to come. She wasn't
Oh.
coming to school. She
Oh.
had some kind of health issue. I don't know exactly what it was, but she wasn't coming to school. So my daughter, who had already been through, with her father dying, and this is the daughter that went through so much,
Mm-hmm.
this was the last thing she needed. And it, we got her up there anyway, moved her in. She cried the whole time.
Oh my
It
goodness.
was a disaster. You walk up and down the halls and you see all these, roommates setting up rooms
Oh
together, and she didn't.
gosh.
It was the
Oof.
worst. It was, she
Oof.
cried the whole time.
Oh
I
gosh,
almost took her
Stacy.
home that day because she was so hysterical. But at the end of the day, she said, I was beyond proud of her. She said, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to try.
Was she far from home?
She was only 3.5 hours. It
That's
was,
far. That's far.
it is far. My other daughter was like getting on a plane and flying. So this one to
Oh.
me was close, but she was 3.5 hours away. So we left and we left her there and she tried it and she stayed for 3 weeks. And it was like a week that we thought it was kind of moving in the right direction, but she finally called me and hysterical. And she said, besides the fact that she was just not happy there, it wasn't the school for her and the roommate situation. And she also, what she really wanted was to go into fashion. She's always had like a flair for fashion. And the school didn't even have what she wanted because it wasn't her first choice. There was just so much.
Mm.
So she decided she wanted to go to like a fashion college in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And we live right near. So I took her home. She took one semester off. She applied to school. She got in, and now she's in school in the city, and she's very, very happy. Thank God.
And in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like, oh, this is going to have a happy ending,
No,
right? It feels like I'm in a new ring of hell right
yes,
now.
that day, those whole 3 weeks, but especially that day we
Mm.
moved her in, it was hell. Like
Mm.
I was crying. I was like on the floor at one point crying because
Oh
it was
gosh.
so horrible. And people said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't let her come home, and she should be tough, and she should do this." And I'm like,
Mm.
you know what? You got to know your own kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew this wasn't right, and I'm not listening to anyone, and I'm just doing what I got to do, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those times where, you know what? Her dad should have been there helping us
Mm.
and helping her. And,
Ah.
maybe he would have helped her pick a different school. Like things might
Mm.
have been so different. So that was the other thing, like sitting there, moving her in. And it was bad.
Oh my goodness. I appreciate your honesty because people will say, it's hard to have your kid go to college and it's hard. I mean, it is hard in a way like you are in a fetal position.
Yes.
You are like, I have a client said, I just started walking by my son's empty room and not crying. That was 6 months ago. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such a crazy system where you give everything to them and you love them beyond what you can imagine and then you're supposed to launch them. I mean,
Yeah.
who came up with this system? It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's totally crazy.
Mm,
And like I said, the consensus is always, oh, let them stick it out and let them
mm,
try and let them this. And in some instances, maybe that is the right thing to do. But
mm-hmm,
you got to go with your gut. And I
mm.
knew she needed to come home.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're more in tune with your gut now because you've had to be you're the main, you're
Oh,
the parent.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it, it's also partially, yes, I am the only parent, and yeah, I think I'm very, very close with my daughters because I am the only parent. Not saying that I wouldn't be either if I wasn't, but
Mm-hmm.
I always say to my friends, I'm like, well, I'm their only option. They're not running
Mm-hmm.
to somebody else and saying, Mommy's being mean to me. Like, I'm all they got. So,
Yeah.
so we are very close. And it's also, I think it's as you grow older and as your kids grow older, I think parenting changes. And I just know when me personally, when my kids were little, I was very nervous and I was very, I should be doing this and I'm not doing this right and I have to do this right. And, worrying about what everybody else was doing. And, you know, partially after Howie died, and also I think just growing into myself, I don't care anymore. Not that I don't care about them, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't care how I do things. I do things the way I want to do
Mm-hmm.
them, and that's it.
And it sounds like, I mean, not to make too many generalizations and assumptions, but it sounds like, you're living near Manhattan in New Jersey, and there are a lot of eyes on you. There's a whole thing about status, and we do it this way, and, there's schools you're supposed to be going to, and I'm making
Absolutely.
assumptions here, but
No, no,
having
you're right.
grown up outside of New York, I kind of know the scene, and it sounds like you're saying, yeah, I see what the norm is here. I see what, the protocol is, but I think I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I'm not saying I'm like this radical, like crazy, that I'm doing things so different than
Yeah,
everybody else. I'm definitely
you're
not.
not
But
off the grid or anything.
no, not at all. But I do think it's funny, my daughters call me a cool mom. Um, and
Ah,
I'm not a cool mom in the fact that, I'm letting them drink in my house and throw parties and all that. I'm not that
right,
kind of cool mom.
right.
But I try to deal with them in my own way and handle
Mm-hmm.
things in my own way. And I think they appreciate that. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like very strict and I'm not like this should be done this way and this has to be done that way. I kind of wing it, honestly.
Mm,
And I hope it works. And most of the time it does seem to
mm,
work, like going with my gut and just kind of
mm-hmm.
knowing my own kids and myself.
And
Uh,
trusting yourself that, maybe it's not perfect, but it's working, and it's certainly good enough.
Yes. And it is hard. And it's interesting that you lived around here too. It is hard living where I live. And, people expect a lot. And, I always use the example of my older daughter with her grades. Um, she always struggled a little bit in school. Her dad used to help her a lot when she was younger. He really had a lot of patience with her. And as she got older and after her dad died, I she had so many issues with like her mental health and dealing with her father, that school to me took a backseat. And I'm
Mm,
not saying, oh, she was failing everything, but if she was getting, C's, I was okay with that because her health and her mental health were so much more important to me
mm-hmm.
than her getting A's and B's.
I
And
see.
she did, she did sometimes get A's and B's, but like if something slipped through the cracks, it slipped through the cracks. If she didn't do amazing on a test, that was okay because to me that wasn't the most important thing in the world. There was so many
Mm-hmm.
other things going on with her. And I think that mindset is so not acceptable around here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that everything is your grades and you have to have this and you have to go to this school. And,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do that. And you know what? I had to do it work for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're an independent thinker.
Yeah, it's funny because if you had said that to me 8 years ago, I would have laughed at you. But no, now I
Mm-hmm.
am. It's very
Mm,
funny.
right. So what do you want other new widows to know, Stacy?
Um, that it sucks. That's what
Mm,
I started one of my early blogs with that. It sucks. It was
mm,
100% sucks.
mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to sit here and ever tell anyone, oh, you'll be fine.
Mm.
Because it's not that simple. I wasn't fine for a really long time. But as time goes on, I think you almost need to do something for yourself. And there's a lot of like, I did an interview with somebody once talked about self-care. And I think that's very important. And yes, my focus was laser focused on my kids for a long time, but it was when I kind of started then taking care of myself and when I started writing that I really felt I was better and I was getting through it.
It sounds
Um,
like the writing was therapeutic for you.
Oh, definitely. The writing was
Uh-huh.
definitely therapeutic for me. And the whole thing with helping others is really therapeutic for me. It really gives me a purpose that I don't know if I had before.
I see.
So I think I would say, do something for yourself, take something for yourself, like have something that's yours. I think it's very important. And yes, like I wasn't going to say yes, you'll get through it, but you do, and time does heal all wounds, and it's never going to go away. That's something that's always going to be with me, and it's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be with my kids. But it's not going to define me forever. It's just a part of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a chapter in your life.
Yeah, yeah. It was a rough chapter, but it's getting better. It does get better.
where can people find you and read your blogs and look at your website? What's your contact information?
My blog is www.thewidowwearspink.com.
Okay.
And Living the Second Act is www.livingthesecondact.com.
Okay.
And I can be reached at editor at livingthesecondact.com.
Okay.
And if
Mm-hmm.
anyone wants to write for, like, we're always looking for new writers. And
Mm-hmm.
if anyone ever would think about writing their story, we would love to hear from you.
Sure. Sure. I think that's a great invitation.
Yeah, no, it is.
Lovely.
It's great. Like I said, writing has helped me through this, and if you have any interest in sharing your story, we would love to have
Mm-hmm.
you.
Well, that's a great invitation.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing your story and for being so honest and, really laying it out there in sort of real language and real feelings that people can identify with.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This was lovely. It really was. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. In this phase of our lives, we're more aware that our time is precious, and we certainly don't want to waste it taking care of stuff that we no longer need, left over from a life that we are no longer living. We know we would feel better with less clutter and more open space, but we don't know how to get there. If this sounds familiar, I'd love you to check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. This course is different than others you may have tried because we give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and tools to help you face the overwhelm and feelings that come up when you're going through your clutter. It's practical and realistic, and the lessons are short and punchy and very manageable, but it has the power to change your life. We all deserve to live in a peaceful home without the chaos of too much stuff. Find out more at NicoleChristina.com. And next week, we're going to hear from John Leyland, who's a New York Times columnist and the author of Happiness is a Choice. It's a fascinating book where John interviews and spends time among the oldest old and learns some really beautiful lessons that are life changing. I think you're really going to enjoy that. See you then.